The Feeble Scholar will grace us with his presence very soon. How's it going, everyone? This is Kay, and the 3.4 banners are going to be pretty amazing. We have Alhaitham, a very beloved character, finally being released, then Xiao making his 4th appearance, Hu Tao, and finally Yelan, who inspired many, let's just say, creative artworks about a particular fetish. As always, I'll break down the strengths and weaknesses for each character, how you would typically use them, and who you should prioritize getting. First, let's start with Alhaitham, who apparently everyone calls Dendro Daddy. His primary role will be an on-field Dendro DPS. His E-skill specifically will be his main talent since it creates a light mirror which transforms all his attacks to Dendro. It's also very similar to Keqing, in which you can tap or hold to aim, but it functions entirely differently. Alhaitham's main form of damage will be from his projection attacks that will occur when hitting enemies while the light mirrors are active, so his normal attacks aren't the main damage dealers. This would explain why his recent adjustments lessened his normal attack multipliers but buffed his projection numbers. This is where Alhaitham becomes a little complex to use since you'll have to manage mirror stacks. He can carry a max of 3 mirrors and you'll want to maintain all 3 to fully maximize his damage. Thankfully, upon using his skill, you'll always have at least 2. You'll always get 1 mirror upon activation, but if he starts out with none, 1 additional mirror will be generated, which is why I said he'll always have at least 2. Another way to generate a mirror is by using his charge attack thanks to his A1 passive, but it has a 12-second cooldown, so don't think you can spam it. As of right now, mirror stacks will disappear 1 by 1 every 4 seconds. Projection attacks also triggers every 1.6 seconds, and like I said, the more mirror stacks, the higher the damage. His elemental burst will consume all mirror stacks and increase the number of hits based on how many stacks were used. So the more stacks, the longer his burst remains, which deals additional hits. Now Alhaitham will create light mirrors after his burst ends based on how many stacks were used. So if 0 stacks were consumed when activating his burst, he will create 3 mirrors, giving you access to max damage with his projections right away. If 1 stack was used, he'll create 2 mirrors, then 1, then 0 mirrors if you consume all 3 stacks. More testing needs to be done, but the general starting move for Alhaitham is using his burst first to gain max mirror stacks and then use his E-skill and charge attacks to maintain the stacks until you switch him out. His burst will be affected, yes, but again, his projection attacks is the main priority. A key thing to remember is that the light mirrors is what gives Alhaitham his projection and Dendro infused attacks. If you consume all of them, well then his attacks return to normal. This also means both his burst and his skill can be used to have him enter a Dendro state, which makes him a reliable Dendro driver or enabler. A few stat issue you may encounter is that Alhaitham's talents scales off of his EM, and his burst needs to be consistent, since you'll have to rely on it to instantly gain max mirrors each rotation. This is where getting the right stats can be somewhat of an issue. You'll need ER, EM, crit rate, crit damage, which is never fun to farm. Now if you want to increase his damage, you can create a spread focused team with Electro supporting him. With his strong Dendro application, Alhaitham can be used in both Bloom or Hyper Bloom teams, so he has strong team flexibility and synergy. As of right now, he will be your best on-field Dendro DPS character. Like I mentioned before, more testing needs to be done after his release. An issue you'll mainly encounter would be executing his most optimal combo to constantly maintain all 3 stats while simultaneously dealing the highest damage. Combos in Genshin isn't the hardest thing. With some practice, you'll get it down. But let's be honest, aside from a select few, there's a lot of casual players who may not want to use QN5, N1C, N5, E, N3C repeat, right? Not an actual combo, but the game can get absurd like that sometimes. And sometimes, we just want to turn on our monkey brains and start tapping buttons. Xiao is a character we're all familiar with. He's an animal hyper carry who relies on his burst to deal damage. You'll build a specific team to help him increase his damage output, and you'll usually have a shielder to protect him. It's not necessary, but he can be a bit fragile. There are recent updates you can use for Xiao. As you know, his best artifacts would be Vermilion, but Desert Pavilion serves as a great alternative. But remember, if you are using it, use his charge attack first and then jump to plunge. Most importantly, Faruzan is a great addition and support, and as support, he desperately need it. If you don't have her at C6 like me, sadly, Xiao will still deal more damage, but it won't be as strong due to the lack of crit damage boost that comes from her C6, and you'll experience some energy issues since both aren't that great at producing particles. Nonetheless, Xiao can deal significant AoE damage, and since you're constantly leaping into the air, he can avoid some damage. His enemy stagger will also come in handy, and he's very simple to use. Key things to remember: plunge has 3 types of damage. 2 of them are high and low plunge, the former having higher multipliers. So with Xiao, you want to use the high plunge, meaning jump a little higher just before attacking. The third one is called collision plunge, in which his spear hits enemies directly before impacting the ground. This way you'll deal 2 types of damage with just 1 move. Issues you'll experience when using him is energy management. Like I mentioned before, you'll most likely need a second animal character who can funnel particles to him. Not only that, you'll need a balance of high damage stats like attack percentage and crits, along with ER because you'll need his burst ready every rotations. Try to aim for around 120 to 130 ER, but more if you can. Xiao is a fun character to use, and if you like seeing big animal numbers, well, he's the guy who can do it. Next is Hu Tao, the very social and happy character who wants to bury you 6 feet under to boost business. I'm just joking. She's actually a really amazing story character. Hu Tao is considered one of the best DPS in the game, who excels in single target situations, so boss battles, but this doesn't mean she can't kill mobs of enemies. Her primary form of attack will be using her E skill for charged attacks. This is where many would recommend getting her at C1 since her charge won't consume stamina, allowing you to dash cancel instead of jump cancel, which can lead to more damage. Combine that with the Staff of Homa and you'll be seeing big pyro numbers, but let's be realistic here. Most of us can't afford C1 and Homa. Her burst is also quite powerful both in damage and survivability since it heals her. You'll most likely use her in vape teams in which Xiao or Yelan will be essential as you'll need a reliable hydro enabler, and currently those 2 are the best. Hu Tao's A1 isn't beneficial to her specifically, but more so great for sub DPS thanks to the crit rate boost, making Xiao or Yelan crit more often. Now her A4 is vital for increased damage, and you'll typically want her at half life or less, but depending on your team, this will be affected, like having Bennett on the team or having shielders, which will make HP management a bit easier. Now Hu Tao is a bit technical, in which you have to manage your HP and combos for the most optimal damage. This shouldn't be something to sway you from pulling her, and let's be honest, if the enemy is dead, that's all that really matters, right? But animation cancel will be important for her playstyle. I mentioned her dash cancel and jump cancel. If you don't have her at C1, both her charged attacks and dashing will consume all your stamina really fast, which is why jump cancel is the safer option for C0, which yields lesser damage. Not saying she can't use dash cancel on C0, it's just that you'll have to manage her stamina now. This goes with HP management too. You want to play her at low health, but if you don't have enough stamina to dodge, well then she's getting whacked in the face. This goes back to me saying a lot of players just wants to turn on their monkey brains and tap buttons. Hu Tao isn't a complex character or anything, but there is of course that technical side to using her. But without a doubt, a lot of fans also love optimizing combos. Hu Tao is also very single target focused. Yes, she can deal with mobs of enemies, but you want to use her at what she's best at. Overall, Hu Tao is praised as being one of the highest damage dealers in Genshin Impact, and if you're a huge fan of speedrunning Abyss or seeing big numbers, well, she's someone you'll want. Finally, we have Yelan. She's a sub DPS hydro enabler who scales with HP stats. If you're familiar with using Xiao, she functions similarly, in which her burst will be her main strength, allowing you to easily trigger hydro reactions. So like Xiao, she fits into almost the same teams as him, working well in vape comps, freeze teams, bloom, hyper bloom. One thing I personally love about Yelan is using her skill as a means to travel. Trust me, it's a game changer. It's basically a fast-paced sprint. Funny enough, a lot of players want her at C1 not for combat reasons, but for open world travel thanks to the extra charge on her skill. Yelan also benefits greatly from Hydro Resonance, since the more HP she has, the higher her damage, which is why a lot of players like using her and Xiao together. Now, just a quick breakdown on Yelan and Xiao differences. Xiao offers more utility like healing and slight resistance, which is great for characters that gets easily interrupted. Yelan, on the other hand, focuses more on damage, and thanks to her A4 buff, your main DPS will hit harder. Just make sure you have a lot of ER for her, because without her burst, Yelan doesn't offer much, so having her burst ready every rotation is absolutely necessary. So out of the 4 characters, who should you pull for? Now this is a recommendation for C0 on all characters, as that's the most realistic for many players. I mean, I personally wish we all can afford higher constellation levels, but sadly, that's just not the case. If you can only choose one character, Yelan should be the top priority. She is one of the best hydro enablers you'll ever get. Her only real competition is Xiao, whom you can use together with. Like I mentioned, her A4 adds damage to your active character, and for Abyss Trials, more damage means potentially better score. Yelan was and is still currently one of the most used characters in Spiral Abyss after many updates, which, as you know, changes enemy types, so that just shows how valuable she is and how she maintains relevance. On top of her combat abilities, using her skill as a means to travel may sound very silly, but trust me, it's really helpful for exploration and, of course, collecting all those materials. Yelan checks many gameplay boxes. Great SSub DPS, strong Hydro Enabler, travel, can fit into a lot of teams. There's no reason not to pull for her aside from you not needing her because maybe you have a C6 Xiao. But even if you do have them, you can still put them together, or you can put them on separate teams on Spiral Abyss, so you'll still find a use for her. Think of it this way. What's better than one Xiao? Having two Xiao. I'm just joking a bit, but functionally, they are very similar, and therefore you'll benefit a lot by having Yelan. Now, if you really don't want or need Yelan because maybe you have a C6 Xiao, then going for Hu Tao is the best alternative. She's regarded as a DPS monster for a reason, and like Yelan, she's frequently used on multiple Abyss updates. Well, maybe not as much as Yelan, since Hu Tao needs a specific team built around her, while Yelan is far more flexible as she supports others. With Hu Tao, you're going to have a lot of fun, specifically in vape teams, but you can branch off to melt teams. The whole HP and stamina, dash cancel, jump cancel management thing isn't as bad as it sounds. It's just to optimize the best possible damage, but like I said before, does it really matter if the enemy is dead? Some people will say yes because they want to cause an overkill, which is understandable. Who doesn't like slaughtering enemies? The next character is a bit of a situational recommendation. Logically, Xiao should be prioritized if you don't want Yelan or Hu Tao. He's also a DPS monster, and if you can provide strong buffs that includes Faruzan, he'll deal way more damage compared to Alhaitham. Most importantly, Alhaitham needs more playtesting once released. Since he's not officially out yet, we can't really judge how strong he can be. Between him and Xiao, I'd say it's interchangeable in terms of priorities. I would personally recommend Alhaitham because he can fit into a lot more teams compared to Xiao, and also there's not a lot of Dendro characters to begin with, let alone an on-field DPS one. Yes, one can argue Nahida can fulfill that role, which is true. I mean, if someone can build a main DPS Barbara, anything is possible. But the thing is, Alhaitham's role is meant to be a DPS, while Nahida is more so utility. With Alhaitham, you can open up more combos with Spread, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, even Nilu Blooms, which has become very popular. Again, he needs to be playtested after release, but he has the potential to be a very good character. Maybe not broken, but a good one. Now on the safer side though, Xiao being the animal monster he is, going for him above Alhaitham is also the correct choice, especially if you have C6 Faruzan. Matter of fact, if you do have her max out, forget about Alhaitham. Xiao is going to be incredible. Breaking it down, Yelan should be number 1 even if you do have Xiao. Said it many times, she's one of the best Hydro characters in Genshin. If you don't want Yelan and need a powerful DPS character, then Hu Tao is 100% recommended. There's only a few characters who can compete with her in terms of damage output. Lastly, go for Alhaitham if you want to have more options for Dendro plays. I'm personally looking forward to seeing how he'll perform in Nilu teams. I always recommend in every video to wait a couple days after a character's release just so players can properly test them. But on the safer side, again, go for Xiao. We know what he can do and how good he is. He's a lot more restricted in team builds and you're not really going to trigger a lot of reactions. Think of him as Ito. Your goal is to increase his damage output. In Xiao's case, deal the highest animal damage you possibly can. Simple and effective. Well, there you have it. Comment down below to let me know who you're pulling for. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for future Genshin Impact videos. As always everyone, have a great day and good luck on your pulls.